Well, good afternoon, and welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast pre-show on New Thought Media Network. I am Bill Marchiony, and Carol Lawrence is running a tad behind schedule, but she will be along shortly. And so I'm a little bit at a loss because usually she's the one who decides what we're going to talk about. But not that I can't decide for myself. It's just that I'm open to all manner of possibilities. So while we are awaiting Carol to show up so that we can begin recording the podcast, I will tell you what I say every time is that we are open to comments, suggestions, questions, inquiries, prayer requests, and so forth, which you can put into your the comments on the social media, and we'll be able to respond to them live while we're doing the broadcast. Or you can go to the website where we can find all things practical prayer, which is bethelight.com, be-the-light.com. And there's a section on the Practical Prayer Podcast in there, and you can use the form in there to submit the same sort of thing, inquiries and so forth. And again, be happy to take that up with you, even if it's just to talk about how wonderful practical prayer is working in your life, how you think that it's a load of drivel, and you're objecting to it. And, it's like everybody's got an opinion. We can do that. And in any case, we would look forward to hearing from you. So what I want to go over, just while we have a couple of minutes, is I want to talk about spiritual bypass. And that's when something happens and we immediately jump to principle. And the principle is that there's one power and presence, one divine love that is sharing itself as all of its creation. So everything is that divine love unfolding. And when something crappy happens, if you jump right to, oh, it's love unfolding. Oh, this is God's will. Oh, it's, first of all, it's true, but that doesn't make it any less dismissive or undermining of the very real experience that a person is going through. I had a friend pass away a week ago, and leaving all of that, person who's way too young and way too vibrant and way too much of a joy absent in life, and that shock and that sadness and that experience is very, very real. And trying to skip over the experience that we're having of the change and the transition and the loss, and go right to principle, oh, well, it's all love unfolding, is really, it doesn't help. And in fact, in a lot of ways, it can undermine us because it makes us seem uncaring or unsympathetic. There are people, and I know them, who are members of a spiritual community, doing the New Thought thing, and when there's a problem in their life, they get a relationship problem, they're getting divorced or breaking up with their longtime whoever, especially if both people have been involved in the community, is one or both of them will stop showing up for a while because they don't want to bring that into the community. And on the one hand, I understand it, and on the other hand, that's exactly the time when being surrounded by a supportive community would be the most helpful. So for me, and for all of us, is the reminder and the invitation that when something happens, to be present with it and to allow that human experience to happen. Because yes, we are spiritual beings having a human experience, but let's not undermine the human experience that we're having. We're having a human experience for a reason. And to be with that, and it might take 10 years of mourning, or it might take a good cry, or it might take some other event or experience to be able to deal with the humanness of it and then go back to principle. And of course, we take the principle with us all the time anyway. When something happens, the joke is that when something happens, the politician says, oh, thoughts and prayers are with you. And that's just dismissive. That's like, okay, there's a big situation, there's an issue that's going on, and we're not going to deal with it, so we're just going to say thoughts and prayers. But there's actually a lot of power in the prayers. And the thoughts being intentional and positive and affirmative and uplifting thoughts, we get to bring something to the situation. So, yeah, there's something crappy that's going on, something unhappy for somebody, a challenge, a difficulty, in whatever they're dealing with. The prayers actually can bring about transformation. Sometimes the prayer can change the experience that they're having. Sometimes the prayer can be for peace of mind and for love unfolding. We can always do a prayer for anybody at any time without their permission, as long as we're not praying for what we want them to have. If we want to do a prayer, the generic prayer is highest and best unfolding with love and ease for all involved. And that could be for the person who's going through it. That could be for the family members who are supporting them. It can be for everybody involved. Highest and best unfolding with love and ease for this person and everybody involved. And when you say thoughts and prayers, and you do that, the thoughts and prayers actually have an impact and influence, and they wind up bringing transformation to the situation. So anyway, that's my little soapbox thing. Still not seeing Carol. It's 10 minutes after, so I'm going to roll the dice and think that either she's going to show up at the perfect moment, or I'm going to do the Practical Prayer podcast solo, which will be interesting, especially with as little preparation as I have for this particular episode, and also has a possibility of being much quicker and shorter than usual. So let's roll the dice and see what happens.
A practical prayer is a prayer that works.
These discussions between Reverend Bill Marchiony and Carol Lawrence dive into the details of how it works and how to work it.
Reverend Bill is a New Thought minister and the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results.
Your new life begins with a new thought.
Carol Lawrence is on a spiritual quest, finding the New Thought teaching after decades on the pulpit in 3 different traditional denominations.
I've got some questions.
Together, they're exploring the philosophy and activities that come together from many of the world's religions to create the practical spirituality that is New Thought.
Welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony.
We're having a wonderful experience today. We had exactly 0 time to prep. Apparently, Carol was running a little bit behind schedule and got to the recording session, which we do live. And so we have not had, this is the first moment that we are speaking. And so I was ready to queue up a lesson of my own to run solo, which is what I was sharing with the pre-show audience right before we rolled the intro. But here's Carol, and welcome. And I'm sure you have a story, and it may or may not matter. And if it does, then share the story. And if not, then let's talk about something.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Let me just say this. I'm trying to learn to be a good patient. So you got to take appointments when you can get them.
Gotcha.
And so, you know what I mean? Okay, So let's go with what you were talking about. Because let me just say this. There is no hope in this world that I'm ever going to be labeled a good patient. But I'm trying.
Okay.
I'm trying. Okay.
Well, that brings up all the questions for me about who's going to do the labeling. Because I'll call you a good patient because I have absolutely no skin in the game. You want to be a good patient, I'd be happy to volunteer that up. And it means as little as it could possibly mean. So what I was going to talk about, if I were flying solo today, is about how New Thought came about. And we tend to talk about what it is now, but we don't as much talk about where it came from. And the first thing about New Thought is that it's not new. The idea behind New Thought is that this is the same process that has been going on since the very beginning of time. The situation is as the situation is, and then there is a new thought, and that thought is creative, and there is a creative law that responds to that new thought and brings new experience into being. And that's the same process that was going on at the moment of creation. The Big Bang, or the infinite said, let there be light, and then there was light. The let there be light was a new thought. The reason there wasn't light before is that nobody said let there be light. So I was just waiting for somebody to say that, or the infinite to say that, and then it happened. So New Thought is a process, a technique, it's a creative law that has been going on since the very beginning of time. And every religion has touched on it a little bit. Some with a little bit more clarity than others. And then along came this minister in the late 1700s, early 1800s. He was in New England, and and there have been people who had ideas like this before. Emanuel Swedenborg, 150 years earlier, had some very similar ideas. But this Unitarian minister in Boston just realized that the story that they'd been telling didn't make sense for him anymore. So he said, no, there's only one. There's not a trinity, there is one, and it is showing up as everything, including each of us. And that was Ralph Waldo Emerson. And yay!
That's my guy.
Yeah, he's like the founding guy of this whole New Thought movement. He didn't really think it was a movement. He thought it was just a great idea that he should start talking about. And he was a badass. So he came up with these ideas, and he started the transcendentalists started meeting in his living room and coming up with ideas about how this all applied. He was the relatively notable platform speaker and pulpit speaker, and rather renowned in his Unitarian church. And then he decided that he didn't believe in the Trinity anymore. He believed this idea of unity. And for some reason, Harvard Divinity School invited him to give the commencement address. And so he went and told them all what they were doing wrong. And that was the last time that Harvard invited him to speak.
Yeah.
So he came up with this idea, and he said, "This is this is the truth. This is the way the world works. This is the way the universe works." And it's fascinating. You can read The Oversoul and Self-Reliance and some other Emerson essays, and it's brilliant and remarkable insight. And one of the things he did not do is tell anybody how to do it. Like, what is the process for having a new thought that's going to create a new experience? If we're doing this all the time, then how do we do it? What does that look like? What's the technique? What's the practice? What? But he didn't touch on any of that. So there sat this wonderful idea for, 20 or 30 years. And then this other guy in New England, Phineas Parkhurst Quimby, who was a watchmaker, said, let's give this a try. So he came up with the technique, and he started by getting mesmerists, which were early versions of hypnotists. Then he would have people mesmerized so they were in a pliant state, and then he would set a mental intention for the healing that he wanted to have happen for them. And it worked. It worked. And people started being healed of all sorts of stuff. I mean, he did people who came to him with tuberculosis and then didn't have tuberculosis anymore. People who came to him with back problems that kept them from being able to get around at all were able to take up their bed and walk and go back into full, rich lives. 12,000 people over the course of 7 years that he healed. And he did it in person, and he did it by mail, and he got rid of the mesmerists eventually because he realized that it wasn't necessary to have another person, and it certainly wasn't necessary to have the person who he was talking to be mesmerized. All they had to do was be pliant and willing to believe in the healing, and then it would happen. And so he did remarkable healings for lots and lots of people before he burned himself out. One of his patients who he healed, one of the ones with big back problems, was Mary Baker Eddy. And Mrs. Eddy then had a divine revelation which turned into Christian Science. She's the founder of Christian Science. And Christian Science uses a technique which is remarkably identical to what Quimby was doing, but doesn't mention Quimby at all. And it came along that she said that she wrote she wrote a book about it, and then she said you can read that book and the Bible, and that's where Christian Science came from. And it's got all the things that you've heard about Christian Science, which included that you should not go to a doctor, you should not do anything other than pray if there is an issue that comes along. So they were, on the one hand, real hardcore about this. They're very serious. The principle is always at work, and you can change your experience with a prayer. And they did that. And you might have heard of the Christian Science Monitor, and there's a lot of other publications that were involved. And so Mary Baker Eddy got herself surrounded with a whole bunch of people, started a church, started having an organization. And one of her early employees was a woman by the name of Emma Curtis Hopkins. And Emma, another one who I love because she got thrown out. She had to leave the Christian Science Church because she believed all of that stuff, but she didn't believe it was limited to just the way that Mrs. Eddy said it had to work. So Emma Curtis Hopkins went and started teaching and healing people herself. And she went and taught a lot of people, including, there's these these two, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. Myrtle Fillmore kind of discovered this stuff on her own out in the Kansas City area. She'd always been the sickly kid, and then she realized that there's no sickness in God, and she healed herself with that knowledge. And her husband, who is a real estate guy, noticed that was going on. He had, like, one leg was longer than the other, so he always had this awkward walk and pain. He prayed himself out of that. They decided maybe there's a thing here. So they founded the Unity Church, or Unity School of Christianity, which is now the Unity Movement. And that's still gone on. Unity Village is still a big thing because it was real estate, and he knew how to make that happen. Huge, gorgeous place in Lee's Summit, Missouri, where I go every year for the affiliated New Thought Network retreat, which just happened a month ago. And so he started Unity, and then they studied with Emma Curtis Hopkins, and then Nona Brooks, I believe, one of the founders of Divine Science, also studied with Emma Curtis Hopkins, and a bunch of other people studied with Emma Curtis Hopkins. Ernest Holmes was the final student of Emma Curtis Hopkins. He's the one who founded religious science. So she's like the vector. She's like patient zero of New Thought. So she's the one who was teaching all those people back about that time about how this worked. And it was coming to be a movement. And so that's how this New Thought thing came into being. And there were other people who were involved in making their own contributions. And it was all very helpful. And it turned into something that was a thing. The youngest one of that bunch was religious science, which is the one that I was trained in. Was founded by Ernest Holmes, who started out being a platform speaker, which is like a step above Circus Barker. Another one from New England, but he moved out to California. And he and his brother started teaching on this principle that they had. He was the synthesist, so he came up with the formula for a healing prayer. And he didn't do it by making it up. He did it by looking at all of the successful prayers in all the other religions. And he said, you know what they all have in common? They all have these steps, these elements in common. And so he created spiritual mind treatment. And the reason that he called it spiritual mind treatment was because this was the days before anesthetics and antibiotics. So nobody really knew what was going to be the winning healing modality. It could be Western medicine, it could be Eastern medicine, it could be chiropractic, could be osteopathy, and it could be spiritual healing. So Ernest Holmes wanted to put himself in the category of being taken seriously by the scientific folks. So he called it religious science, and he called the technique spiritual mind treatment. 100 or so years later, I took the same formula and I renamed it practical prayer, because who wants to go to get a spiritual mind treatment when you can get a practical prayer to get a real result? So anyway, that's my history in a nutshell. And then there's a lot of nuance that came on since then. So I have spoken for a while. We're going to take a break, but I'm going to let Carol talk and actually say something in this segment.
Oh, God. Okay. Are we taking a break, or you want me to say something?
You want to say something? You can. If you want to, you would start again after the break. You can do that.
Yeah, let's wait till the break.
Okay, deep breath. Let's take a break.
Learn to put practical prayer to work in your life. The steps are simple to learn and let you begin to get real results to create the life of your dreams immediately. Reverend Bill Marchiony's widely acclaimed book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, gives you a clear summary of the New Thought principles behind practical prayer and the series of easy-to-understand steps found in the most effective prayers from religions and spiritual practices all over the world and throughout history. Practical prayer is not a replacement for your religion or practice. It's a technique to make the work you do in consciousness even more effective. The book includes 40 prayers on various topics that you can adapt as needed and use as your own. Practical Prayer for Real Results is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook on Amazon or at b-the-light.com. That's b-the-light.com.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony. And I was fascinated by the history. I'm always fascinated by the history of New Thought because it is so, and how else can I, so incredibly meaningful to me as a, if you, comparatively speaking, I'm a newcomer to this. We started out talking about who I call Mr. Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson, which is, he was actually my first teacher, and I shared that with you. Mm-hmm. So, I got to learn to read by reading his books, and I got to tell you, I didn't understand a thing of it that I was reading. Because this was before kindergarten, before they had preschool. They didn't have that, but I had a dedicated aunt that was going to make all her nieces and nephews smart. So she was going to make us read before we went to school. So that's how I got it. And, it didn't make sense until years and years later, but it was all there. And actually the subject, the way you started it, is not at all different than what I had in mind. So that goes to your point that it's all one. Mm-hmm. Right? Because it's about change. And that's why I find New Thought so incredibly fascinating, because first of all, it said New Thought. And I think that is an extremely practical way. So instead of people getting all scared, which they do, New Age, New Thought, mixing it all up there and it's not whatever. What in the world is wrong with having a new thought? Or let me put it this way. There's everything right about having a new thought. If you are comfortable in your own little world space, and I mean that respectfully, because when you say little, people get offended. No, but if, this universe, this world, this universe is so incredibly vast. You have to think through the mind or the idea of eternity, and then you can perhaps get an idea of the world that you live in, because it's very small. And to think that everything has to fall in alignment with your thoughts and agreements, first of all, not only is that hugely arrogant, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, does it? It doesn't. And so I remember when I first said New Thought to a friend, they were extremely offended by the idea that I would even think of something outside of the organized religion. But I had been carrying that with me forever before I ever said it to anybody. And just really absolutely thinking that people would get it. This is new. And for no other reason, let's just put it like this. What you're doing ain't working. So don't be afraid to try something else. That doesn't just go with religion. It goes with anything. So try something new. Don't be afraid to try new things. And it's interesting because when my son was 5, he was in kindergarten, and he wanted his hair a certain way. And I was like, you sure about this? He wanted a mohawk. Mm-hmm. And I said, now, you sure about this? Because, nobody's doing this. And you might be. He said, Mommy, you can't be afraid to try new things. And
He's 5.
And I'm looking at this little snap, right, saying this, but it's so real. So my question is, as you were doing the history out, and I was just being fascinated over and over again at the thought of trying new things. Whatever point we are in our lives, we can try new things, even if the thing you're doing is working. Trying something new adds nuance, energy, flavor, color, and all of that, but particularly if it's not working. And what we are experiencing sociopolitically right now and all of that, there is a lot of fear involved, and rightfully so. I get it. It's not to say that people are wrong for their feelings, but you know what? It's a chance to try something new, a new thought, a new idea. And if it doesn't work, you can always go back.
Yeah.
But new brings like fresh air, an idea. And you talked about in the history of that I was so much enjoying every time you do this, is the idea of collaboration always sticks out for me, and there's the ego stuff involved, and that would take us all in another direction. But a new thought means a new idea, and everybody brings something new to the table. And it can build a beautiful, amazing something. And I'm always excited to see what the something is going to be.
Yeah.
And so new thought to me is like, you can't be afraid to try new things.
I had a friend, I said, your new life begins with a new thought. And he says, well, I'm pretty happy with my life now, so I don't want to have a new thought. And I said, maybe, you want your life to continue along that way. So even if the things that you're doing are very similar, you want to do them some more. You want to do them again. So there's always something new that's going on. And there's a lot of ways of looking at that. One is to use your breath. Take a deep, full breath. Okay, is that what's wonderful? Is the best breath you can possibly take and hold it for the rest of your life? It's like, no. That one worked nicely. I'm going to breathe it out. I'm going to let that one go, and then I'm going to do another one. And the other thing is, I'm very happy where I am. Well, that's great. But you are on the surface of a sphere that's spinning around every 24 hours and circling the sun every 365 days and moving through the galaxy, and the galaxy is expanding. So combined motion is 67,000 miles an hour. You can't stay where you are. So your new thought can be, I want to have the same experience some more. But let that be the thought, because you're moving away from the experience that you had really fast.
Yeah, and let me say this, and this is you and me talking. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot for somebody to digest. And here's this thing that comes to my mind often when people reject something new. I'm careful not to offer too much anymore.
People like the stuff that's been around for a while.
Yeah, and I got a philosophy about that. First of all, when I feel rejected, I go home and do some more homework, because you know why? You're coming back. You're coming back. And I just need to be prepared with your thought, your idea, your question when you get back. Because what you say is true, right? The way things are moving, nothing will stay the same. Just like this horrific moment in history. And that's what it is. It's a moment in history. People will look back and say, "Oh, it was a terrible time." We're here, but it's an opportunity to try something new in our own lives, so that when this moment has passed, we do have something new, other than the lament of what happened. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking about the pandemic. I had never, and most of us had never lived through something so, different as that. But during the pandemic, I took courses. And when it was over, hey, you know what? That was such a benefit to my life, the time, not the pandemic. But, there was an opportunity to change, to make a change, other than to lament what I was going through, because everything in me told me I'm going to be here when it's over. So what do I want to be? Or what I do have, whatever you want to say. And this is a similar thing, and I don't think that we could that's downplaying it at all, because the pandemic was absolutely, completely tragic around the world. This, the same way. We have lived through tragedies before. How did we do it the last time? And how can we do it differently this time? And that's what New Thought brings, I think. It brings the opportunity to see things from a different perspective.
Yep.
And I'm all about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's take another break, and then we're going to do a prayer on creating that new experience that we are so much desiring,
Yeah.
even though we're not in charge of it. Are you ready to get results? Now, that's not a rhetorical question. Are you ready to get results? RUR2GR. That's actually the abbreviation for the steps in a practical prayer: recognition, unification, realization, gratitude, and release, with a couple of extra steps in there in case some doubt creeps in along the way. RUR2GR. This class is about the prayer technique that's common to all of the spiritual practices and religions in the most effective prayers that they have. And by effective, I mean that the prayer works. It actually creates a change in the experience of the person doing the prayer. It gets a result. We're going to begin with theory, and then we're going to take it into practice. By the end of the class, you will have your very own practical prayer that will help create transformation in your life.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony.
Been talking about New Thought and the history of New Thought and how it came to be and what it creates for everybody, and the notion that we're creating our lives new and fresh in every moment and every experience. And with that in mind, I'd like to do the generic prayer. Now, usually when we're going to pray for ourselves, we open ourselves to the idea of what is it that's been going on that we don't like, and then we pivot to that which we would prefer instead, and then set the intention and open the invitation for that good to flow into our lives, and we do the prayer based on that. When there's something going on in somebody else's life or in society or in stuff that's not just about us or the person who has specifically asked for prayer, it's nice to be able to do a prayer. And that's, I was talking about this earlier, that, thoughts and prayers, it's the way that politicians duck responsibility for anything. Something horrific happens because they let it happen, and they say, our thoughts and prayers are with the family. And it really gives thoughts and prayer a bad rap. But thoughts and prayers, especially the prayers part, can be very, very powerful. And there's a prayer that you can do in any situation, for anybody, anywhere, that works. And that prayer is for highest and best unfolding with love and ease for everyone involved. And yes, I will say that a few more times during the prayer, so you don't have to necessarily memorize it or write it down yet. It's going to be highest and best unfolding with love and ease for this person and everyone involved. And I have said that prayer for somebody who is in a hospital or in hospice. I have said that for somebody who's going into surgery. I've said that for somebody who is facing, a job interview or a possibility for change in their life. Somebody who's dealing with a relationship challenge or a brand new relationship. Highest and best unfolding with love and ease for this person and all involved. And here's how the prayer goes. If you're comfortable, you can close your eyes or do whatever it is that you do to turn away from the input that the world has for you, because that lets us open to an even greater possibility. We don't limit ourselves by our immediate circumstances. We become open to the awareness of that infinite creative power, that divine presence, that limitless love that is sharing itself as every part of creation. Everything is God's divine love expressed in a specific and particular way. Sometimes it's clear and obvious that that's what's going on. Sometimes it's so thoroughly hidden that you can't possibly imagine how this could be God's idea of anything. And still, It is all that divine presence expressed in its own way. There is not God and. So it's not God over there and some second-rate something, some malevolent force over here. It is all divine. It is all that one. That is the core and the basis of this New Thought unity teaching. There is only one, and it abides everywhere, and it abides within. And knowing that, I know that it abides within me and each one within the sound of my voice. Each is an expression of that one divine love, shining that light of love in our own unique and specific way. Each one is a different combination of talents, skills, abilities, preferences, experiences, desires. And somehow it's all good. And the experiences that we've been having and the experiences that are unfolding now and those that are coming up next are all that one revealing itself in a new way. So the one thing that I can claim is that as this process unfolds, as this newness comes about, that it is unfolding in a way that brings up the highest and best with love and ease for each one involved. And there's nothing that stands in the way of that. There is no force that opposes that. The claim, the invitation, the opening for highest and best unfolding with love and ease for each of us and for all of us is an idea planted in that infinite creative power, activating that creative law and bringing this newness about. We don't need to know how. We don't need to know the specifics. We simply open to that absolute sure knowing that the highest and best is unfolding with love and ease for all involved. I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for the way that shows up. I'm grateful for the way that we get to explain and label and define it later. And I'm grateful to be able to speak this word and release it into that creative law, knowing that highest and best is unfolding with love and ease for each of us and all of us. So I let it be. And so it is.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marchiony and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com.
be-the-light.com.
Where you can find more information about practical prayer for real results.
Our theme is by Music of Wisdom. You can learn about the spiritual community of New Thought Philadelphia with daily guided meditations,
Weekly celebrations of spirit,
and Reverend Bill's classes in practical spirituality
at newthoughtphilly.org.
That was wonderful.
That was fun. And there were times when I would have gotten so wrapped around the axle about not knowing what's coming next that it would all have been about me being frazzled. And yeah, it was great.
Well, actually, the conversation was great. I was actually talking about the prayer. I thought the prayer was really, really good.
Thank you.
It was really good.
I love that prayer. And I learned that prayer before I found out about the New Thought teaching. There was a woman who was a family counselor years and years and years ago. I brought our daughter to see her, and unbeknownst to me, she was a practitioner, a religious science practitioner, and she told us about highest and best unfolding with love and ease. And it's like, wow, that's really powerful. And it wasn't until several years later that I realized, oh, that was a practical prayer. That was actually a spiritual mind treatment formed as something that would be said by a particularly loving and supportive counselor.
I just think that it's powerful. I do. And the conversation that we had, I thought was exceptional as well.
Yeah. So this is not an invitation for you to show up 10 minutes late again. Because I'm good at rolling with the punches, but, that's enough.
You did great. You did great.
It was fine. And thank you to everybody who's joining us on New Thought Media Network. It's wonderful to have you here for the live stream. If you're watching the recording and you have a comment that you'd like to make, then please feel free to go to the website at BeTheLight.com, be-the-light.com, which is shown on the screen there. There's a section on practical prayer, and you can put in a comment about the podcast, and we will be happy to respond to that. And I love interacting and communicating with you guys. So, off to the first week of of standard time.
I can't believe it's here already.
Man, it happened fast.
Yeah.
It happened fast. But before you know it, it'll be May.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So it is. Thanks, Carol. See you soon.